Like most altcoins, XRP is in the toilet. Unlike most altcoins, XRP has a huge fanatical community behind it, many of whom have supported it for years. But this army of diehards that has held through multiple cycles is being tested like never before. XRP is down over 39% in 2026. It hit an intraday low of $1.05 on the 6th of June, and it now sits roughly 70% below its $3.65 all-time high from almost a year ago. Meanwhile, the crypto fear and greed index is parked in extreme fear. Sentiment is about as bad as it's ever been, and many are now asking,
is it over?
But while the price bleeds out in full view, whale wallets are accumulating XRP at an all-time record pace. Ripple just became a federally chartered trust bank, and there's a piece of legislation sitting in the Senate right now that could flip this entire chart in a matter of weeks. So today I'm going to lay out XRP's price carnage, walk you through what Ripple the company has actually been building in the background, and try to determine exactly which catalyst decides whether this is the end or just the beginning. My name is Guy, and you're watching The Coin Bureau. So, XRP is down almost 40% since the start of the year, with its market cap shrinking to roughly $67.6 billion. It has broken decisively below its 200-day moving average, which sits up at $1.59. For those unfamiliar, the 200-day moving average is the line traders use to separate a healthy uptrend from a broken one, and XRP is trading about 30% beneath it. Meanwhile, the 14-day RSI is sitting at 31.7, right on the edge of technically oversold. And none of this is happening in isolation, of course. So before you get all shirty in the comments, yes, many altcoins are doing considerably worse, and yes, the whole sector is suffering, but this is a video about XRP, so I'm talking about XRP. Anyway, Bitcoin is down around 24% over the past month, dropping below $60,000 for the first time since October 2024. Spot Bitcoin ETFs just bled out roughly $4.4 billion across a 13-day outflow streak. Add in Middle East tensions, sticky inflation fears, and Goldman Sachs scrapping its 2026 rate cut forecast entirely, and you have a textbook risk-off meat grinder. So, XRP didn't break because of its own fundamentals. The entire risk environment turned at once. Now, the market moves fast, and keeping up with both crypto and the wider macro picture is a full-time job. So if that sounds daunting, or you simply don't have 16 hours a day to sit glued to a screen, we've made it a lot easier. Right here on YouTube, you can now access the new Coin Bureau Club Lite plan. For just $10 a month, you'll get daily market updates across both crypto and TradFi, our teams read on the best opportunities, and curated updates with only the bits that actually matter. Just tap the join button below this video to get started. Right, with that, let's get back to it. Now, you might assume that with XRP's price collapsing like this, the smart money would be heading for the exits. However, the on-chain data tells a very different story. The number of wallets holding 10,000 or more XRP has just hit an all-time high of 332,230. That cohort has grown consistently since June 2024 and kept growing straight through this entire drawdown. The millionaire tier, wallets holding over 1 million XRP, added 42 new addresses since January and hoovered up 1.2 billion tokens in the first quarter alone, the heaviest quarterly accumulation since 2023. And the mega whales, the wallets holding 10 million plus, now control roughly 45.83 billion tokens, 68.5% of the circulating supply, and the highest whale concentration since May 2018. On top of that, 91.4% of recent exchange outflows are coming from large holders moving coins into private custody, and over 25 million XRP got pulled off exchanges the moment price touched $1.09. Instead of panicking, the whales appear to be doubling down, which brings us directly to the question, why? Why are the biggest holders buying into a chart this ugly? Well, to answer that, we need to look at what Ripple the company has actually been doing, which is where the asymmetry between the price of XRP and the business behind it becomes clear. Let's start with the bank. In December 2025, the OCC granted Ripple conditional approval for a national trust bank, and on the 1st of April 2026, the final rule activating its permissible activities took effect. Now, this is not a full commercial bank with checking accounts and deposits, etc. It's a national trust charter, a specialized federal license for custody and fiduciary services with direct oversight of Ripple's RLUSD stablecoin. But make no mistake, a federally chartered trust bank is still a serious regulatory milestone for a company the SEC was suing the pants off not that long ago. Ripple is also pursuing a Federal Reserve master account, which would plug it directly into FedWire and FedNow, the backbone of dollar clearing. That one is a pursuit, not a done deal though. The Fed has paused these decisions until the end of 2026, FYI. But the precedent exists because Kraken secured a master account back in March. Then there's RLUSD itself. Ripple's stablecoin has grown to a market cap near $1.7 billion, making it the 8th largest stablecoin on the planet, and it's now live across more than 40 networks. And on the 3rd of June, MasterCard added RLUSD to its 24/7 on-chain settlement network alongside USDC and PYUSD. But perhaps the most concrete proof point is this. In May, Ripple, JP Morgan's Connexus, MasterCard, and Ondo Finance executed a cross-border redemption of a tokenized US Treasury fund on the XRP ledger that settled in under 5 seconds. That is the exact use case bulls have promised for years, finally happening with names like JP Morgan and BlackRock in the room through the DTCC's Tokenization Working Group. And then, on the 10th of June, MasterCard launched its Agent Pay for Machines framework, payments executed autonomously by AI agents, with Ripple named as a launch partner. Which brings us to the ledger itself, because the technology is moving just as fast as the corporate deals. On the 15th of June, the XRP ledger upgrades to version 3.2.0. And buried in that release is a change that is far more symbolic than it sounds. The core server software is being renamed from Rippled to XRPLD. Put simply, the ledger is formally cutting the cord with Ripple, the company. This proves the blockchain is independent, community-run infrastructure rather than one corporation's product. The upgrade also slashes server memory usage by 30 to 40%, lowering the bar for independent node operators. And then there's the XLS66 lending protocol, which enables fixed-term loans directly on the ledger, although this isn't live yet. It's in formal security verification before mainnet. There's also X402, an open standard letting AI agents pay for services with XRP and RLUSD without a human anywhere in the loop, shipped inside the new XRPL AI starter kit on the 10th of June. And the activity numbers back it up. Tokenized real-world assets on the XRPL have grown to roughly $3.5 billion, up from under $1 billion at the start of the year. Meanwhile, daily transactions averaged 2.48 million in Q1, up 35% quarter-on-quarter, and active addresses hit an all-time high of around 8.35 million. David Schwartz, the ledger's original architect, has been framing all of this as the XRPL evolving from a fast payment rail into a full settlement and issuance layer for tokenized stocks, money market funds, and loans. So that's the bull case, and there is a lot to be excited about, if distributed ledger technology and tokenized stock issuance are what gets your heart racing, that is. But let's now look at the catalyst that actually decides everything: regulation. XRP's existential threat, the SEC case against Ripple, is finally and fully behind it. Both parties filed a joint dismissal of their appeals in August 2025, with the final judgment confirming XRP is not a security when sold on public exchanges, and Ripple agreed to pay a $50 million penalty, reduced from the original court-ordered $125 million, with the remaining $75 million returned to the company, as part of that August 2025 settlement. On top of that, under the current administration, both the SEC and CFTC have signaled they view XRP as a digital commodity, but that treatment has not yet been formally codified through agency rulemaking or statute. But here's the thing, agency classification can be reversed by the next administration with a memo. A law cannot. And that is exactly what the Clarity Act would do. Codify XRP's commodity status into federal statute permanently. Now, it already passed the House 294 to 134 and cleared the Senate Banking Committee 15-9 in May. If it passes the full Senate, Standard Chartered has a conditional price target of $8 per XRP tied to cumulative ETF inflows hitting $10 billion. That is the asymmetry the whales appear to be betting on. So, with all that good news out of the way, let's now look at the bear case for XRP because it ain't all sunshine and rainbows out there, folks. First, supply. Ripple releases roughly 1 billion XRP from escrow every single month. It typically relocks 700 to 800 million, but that still leaves 2 to 300 million entering potential circulation. At today's price, that's up to $222 million in fresh sell-side pressure every month, hitting a market that isn't exactly in what you'd call a buying mood. Second, and this is the big one, RLUSD might be cannibalizing XRP's entire reason to exist. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Around 80% of RLUSD circulates on Ethereum, not the XRP ledger. And Ripple's biggest 2026 deals, the MasterCard settlement, the tokenized Treasury pilot, increasingly settle in RLUSD, not XRP. If Ripple's corporate growth runs on its stablecoin instead of its token, then the company can win while XRP holders watch from the sidelines. Third, the smart institutional money isn't unanimous. Goldman Sachs, which was the single largest disclosed institutional holder of XRP ETFs, fully liquidated its entire roughly $154 million position across 4 funds in Q1, confirmed by its 13F filing. Goldman kept its 700 million Bitcoin position. So the message there is pretty blunt. Bitcoin is conviction, XRP was a speculative infrastructure bet. Meanwhile, the Clarity Act is genuinely on a knife edge. Galaxy Digital's Alex Thorne just cut his odds of it passing from 75% down to 60%, and Polymarket is pricing it closer to a coin flip at 47 to 51%. If it fails before the August recess, analysts warn the next viable window might not open until 2030. So the truth is that XRP right now is 2 completely different assets depending on which screen you're looking at. On the price chart, it's a broken, capitulating, structurally bearish coin sitting in extreme fear, bleeding towards the $1 floor with all manner of unpleasantness beneath that. On the fundamental side, however, it's a coin attached to a federally chartered bank, a top 8 stablecoin, sub-5-second institutional settlement, and a record number of whales accumulating. Both of those are true at the same time. The bear case is mostly already priced in. The macro fear, the new supply pressure, Goldman Sachs' paper hands, all of it is in that 40% drawdown that we've already seen. The bull case is almost entirely not priced in because it hinges on a binary legislative event that hasn't happened yet, which is exactly why the whales are accumulating now while it's cheap and uncertain, rather than after the vote when it's perhaps expensive and obvious. So, we need to keep a close eye on the Clarity Act and any progress it makes or doesn't make. If the Senate posts a vote date before the August recess, then crypto and XRP should get a much-needed boost. No date by late summer though, and the bear case has room to run towards $1 and below. We also need to see whether those whale wallets keep accumulating as the pain continues for the time being. If they start to tail off, then that signals conviction is wearing thin, and vice versa. Then there are those XRP ETFs that still set a record $132 million inflow month in May despite everything else that was going on, while fresh names like UBS and Bank of America are taking first-time stakes. Persistent inflows mean institutions are absorbing the supply Goldman dumped. Fourth, we need to watch RLUSD versus XRP in Ripple's deals. If new partnerships keep settling in the stablecoin, the cannibalization thesis is arguably winning, regardless of how good the headlines look. And of course, we need to watch that $1 support level. It is the psychological floor, and if XRP falls through it, then things could get ugly. So then, is XRP at $1 a bullish generational accumulation zone where whales are loading up before Congress turns the entire chart green again, exactly like the smart money did before 2018's recovery? Or is this a bearish value trap where the company quietly roots growth through a stablecoin while escrow bleeds supply and the longed-for legislation never arrives? Generational setup or value trap? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, as only the XRP army can. And if you want to understand exactly how the Clarity Act could rewire the entire US crypto market, not just XRP, then definitely check out our full deep dive on that right over here. Okay, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. This is Guy, signing off.